Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at God of War Ragnarok, one of my most anticipated games of the year. If we have any Moist Meter viewing veterans in here, you'll know that God of War 2018 actually took home the Moisties Grand Prize First Place Best Game of 2018 award, a very prestigious title that games fight tooth and nail for. We gave it to God of War in 2018, and I'm excited to say that God of War Ragnarok exceeds the expectations I had for it. I loved every second of this adventure. It had me strapped into my seat with a big smile on my face and a wet spot in my trousers. I think pretty much everything in Ragnarok is an improvement over its predecessor, which is not an easy thing to do. It was very ambitious to completely change the God of War formula from just standard hack and slash like they had with God of War 1 through 3, and then completely revamp the entire combat system and change the entire narrative structure in order to make God of War 2018, but it was a gamble that paid off greatly, and they've really mastered it with Ragnarok. I feel like Ragnarok has some of the best writing in all of gaming, and I absolutely believe it has some of the best voice acting ever in gaming. Up there with like Red Dead Redemption 2 in terms of both writing and acting. It is just so good. The performances are so compelling, especially Sindri and Odin. It's everything in this game. All of the ingredients lead to the most beautifully tasteful entree you've ever eaten in your life. I loved everything about Ragnarok. I don't think it's a perfect game. I'll get into some of the more minor complaints here in a moment, but let me just keep sucking its dick real quick. I want to keep swallowing the meat. Let's start with a couple of the things that God of War 2018 I thought lacked, which is enemy variety and boss battles. Those were very big complaints that most people had. Ragnarok does not have that issue. There is significantly more boss fights here. There's a lot more enemy variety. It's very clear they had a lot bigger budget to work with, so they were able to fully realize more things in terms of the enemies and the combat and the bosses. It's much, much better. It never gets old fighting through hordes of enemies or fighting bosses. There's now more than just one mini boss. Instead of it just being a recolored troll for fucking 20 hours like it was in 2018, they now have tons of little mini bosses that are fun to fight. Now, not every boss is fun to fight. There are a couple where their main mechanic is they'll hit you twice and then run away with an unpunishable move and then you have to wait for them to come back, which of course is a bit of a tedious headache. I played this game on the highest difficulty, give me God of War, and of course things are spongy, but they really toned down the difficulty from 2018. I don't think that's a positive, I don't think it's a negative, but I want to mention that it is easier than 2018 with its highest difficulty, but some boss battles I really didn't enjoy. I just don't like that mechanic of, we're going to hit you twice, you can punish for a second, then we run away, and now you just wait, because then it becomes less about like skill and mastering the fight, and more about just being extremely patient and slow rolling things, and that's not a big complaint or anything, but I'd like to mention it. The game's also super generous with checkpoints. During any boss fight, like major boss fight, you'll get like 2 checkpoints throughout the fight, so if you get it down to half health and die, well, you probably got a checkpoint somewhere in there, and it's already at like half health again, so it's very forgiving. Unlike 2018. So if you were a little upset by how difficult 2018 was on the highest difficulty, you'll probably be pleased here. And for me, yeah, I didn't mind either way. Now, the combat has had improvements, some quality of life improvements that I really did feel pretty quickly, but they also added more depth to it as well. So they introduce, well, actually, I don't want to get into spoilers, but they do introduce more to the combat, and there is a lot more that you can tinker and play with. There's now set bonuses for some enchantments. There's a lot of ways of having unique builds. The build I used is from early game and it carried me all the way to late game. I used a Vanaheim Poison Toxic Fist build. So I basically had the Stinky Finger build where I just bare-fisted everything, and it worked really well. It was a very fun build. And I feel like there's quite a bit of variety to the builds that you can play with here. So I really did appreciate that. You could cater the playstyle to whatever you're feeling. I really enjoyed just the barbarian slinging fat fists all over the place and dropping it down. I liked it a lot. Now moving on, I want to gush about the story. The story is so good. I can't express enough how much I enjoyed it. I was a little worried that with the big shoes to fill with 2018's story that they'd maybe miss the mark and try a little too hard and just fall short. They did not. They knocked it out of the park. And the side quests. So I didn't do all of the side quests. I did a lot of them in the early game, but fell off in the mid to late game because I really wanted to push through the main story. I will be going back to do all of them, but all the side quests I did felt very important. Like, they had a lot of depth to it. They had a lot of character development during the side quests. Like, they didn't feel useless by any means. Like, they were fun. They had a fun goal. They even had fun fights. And the story and the side quests alone were so good. I swear to God, some of the side quests are better written than most AAA games in their full main story. I'm just so impressed with how well written this game is. There's some dialogue in here that is just so badass that it is still sitting in my head right now and putting a smile on my face. For example, there's a moment where you're just, exploring, and just in normal conversation, a character says to Kratos, "You don't strike me as someone that would fear death," and Kratos says, "I'm not. Death can have me when it earns me." Like, that is just such a masculine fucking outrageous thing to say. I felt like I grew 3 inches and my muscles got more chiseled and I grew a thicker beard just from hearing Kratos say that. And Christopher Judge's voice is so perfect. He again delivers an unforgettable performance as Kratos. And like I said, everyone does an amazing job. But man, just hearing some of those badass lines from Kratos delivered by a voice like Judge is a perfect combination. I can't express enough just how much I love the writing in this game. Though I will admit there are quippier moments than 2018 had. I think there's a few more jokes from characters you wouldn't expect it from. Like with Brock and Sindri, you're expecting some comic relief here and there. But other characters get quippy too, which I think may have been a little much at times. But it's never enough to be jarring or annoying and take you out of it. Just something I noticed, not a positive, not a negative, but just want to mention it. One thing that is an absolute negative, though, is the built-in backseat gaming feature. So I'm sure you've seen this on Twitter by now because it's become a big meme. When you play this game, you're of course going to encounter puzzles, but the game treats you like a fucking idiot who can't tie your own shoes. So the second you look at a puzzle, if you don't solve it immediately, if you take like 3 seconds to look around, your companion will just tell you the answer. They will feed you the solution. And then you just have to sit there and be like, "Oh, what the fuck? I didn't even get a chance to try the puzzle. You already told me how to solve it." It is so frustrating, and it's not a feature you can turn off right now. You'd expect it to be like an accessibility feature, but it's not. It's built in, and you can't get rid of it. At least I haven't seen any way of getting rid of it. So hopefully they have a patch for it because it is so frustrating. And it's not like they even mention it one time. They will spam it. Like, "Have you tried hitting this crystal? Have you tried spinning this? You have to spin this. Why aren't you spinning it? Spin it to solve this puzzle, you goddamn fucking moron troglodyte." Like, at no point does it even give you a chance to solve a puzzle without just screaming the solution at you. So that was a little stupid. I didn't like that at all. But actually, that's probably the biggest complaint I have for the game, which, in the grand scheme of things, is a pretty minor complaint. Now, steering it back into more compliments, the game has amazing music as well. I think everyone's going to immediately notice how great the score is here. Every goddamn moment of this game sounds amazing. It just feels so big, and the music helps complement that atmosphere. And jeepers, I gotta tell you, it is such a beautiful world filled with beautiful things and a lot to explore. There is a lot to do in the game. It is a very long game. So I mainly rushed the story starting around mid-game, and it still took me like 25, 26 hours to beat. And I know there's a lot of content still there for me to do. For example, the Berserkers. So the Berserkers have replaced Valkyries from 2018 as like the big, scary, secret bosses to do. And I gotta say, they're worse than Valkyries. I haven't done all of them, but the ones I have done have been very lackluster. They fall into what I complained about a little bit ago, where some of the enemies, some of the mini-bosses and bosses, are 2 moves and then immediately run away, and then you just have to wait. Every Berserker I've done so far is that. They'll throw 3 moves at you, you punish slightly, then they run away. And of course, they're very spongy, so it just takes a long time. It's like 10 minutes of just that, rinse and repeat till they're dead. Now, hopefully some of the later ones that I've missed improve, but the ones I've done so far for Berserkers are pretty not amazing. I prefer the Valkyrie fights. They were far more memorable and far more fun to actually fight. But luckily the combat's so fucking fun that even a tedious boss fight is still fun because the combat is just so enjoyable. There's a lot more that I'd like to talk about, but unfortunately that's going to get into spoiler territory, so I'm just going to leave it at all of this for now. Plugging God of War Ragnarok into the Moist Meter, I'm giving it a very strong 95%. I cannot recommend this game enough. I think this is a true masterpiece. I absolutely fucking loved it, and I feel like most people will. So yeah, I mean, that's about it. See ya.